Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Sebastian. Together with me is David and Kamil. And today we are going to talk about deployment automation and especially about things you do not see with the naked eye. So we're from Uniteam, and as a company, we focus on introducing DevOps approach to our customers, especially by analyzing the way the production process works. Then we advise them what to change, what's a good improvement, and finally we deliver a DevOps solution based on available tools. We focus on many areas, and our interests are vast. We start from project management, the task management, release and environment management. Then we go through code repositories and package repositories. And finally, we automate environment provisioning, package building, deployment verification, and testing. Today we want to focus on a single piece of the puzzle, which is deployment automation. We want to talk about the challenges. So let's automate deployment. The idea is pretty simple, and it's a pretty good one, but there is something about deployment automation that makes it pretty challenging. When you look at the deployment as a process of organization, it is connected with many different areas. So it's pretty easy to stumble upon some technological debt that you need to overcome in order to automate the deployment. So this is the moment when you realize that this is just the first problem of many in the automatic deployment project. So you're in the situation that you might compare to being in the middle of the dark forest, where everywhere you look, you see some danger and challenges that you need to overcome, and you don't really want to be here because this is not the good place to do DevOps, right? You want to be out. So we chosen 4 most common challenges that we encounter in our projects, and we want to tell you about how to overcome them, what to do, and how to approach them in order to successfully deploy with automatic tools. So what we'll talk about. First of all, there are packages. How can we automate the deployment if every package we get from our developers is different? So packages are one of the problem. But on the other hand, the content of the package differs as well. So how do we cope with the files that are in the package? The files are different because we have many environments, so we need to send appropriate properties to them. So if we have multiple various environments, how do we cope with automatic deployment? Do we make deployment process for each of them, or what do we do? And finally, if currently we are deploying manually, our administrator knows what's happening. So if something goes wrong, he can backtrack his actions and fix the problem. And if it will happen automatically, will he have enough information to fix the problem if anything bad occurs? So these are the 4 challenges that we want to talk about today, and we want to show you our approach, our mindset behind those solutions. So without further ado, the first challenge is about packages. So what is the problem here? First of all, we have multiple sources of changes. We have many in-house developers and vendors that are delivering changes to us. Each of them is doing it in its own way. So the structure is different, the way of delivery is different. For instance, one of the developers might send us the zipped archive, another one may commit it just to the repository. But this is not the main problem. The main problem is that each package has its own custom created instruction by the author of the change. So every time a new package is developed, the developer has to create an instruction, and it has to work. So he needs to make sure that it works, and the administrator needs to understand it and execute it perfectly without any flaws. So this creates area for problems and mistakes. And finally, even if we have many vendors and they are delivering the packages in their own way, they might do it good, right? They might use their own repositories, their own methodologies, and so on. But from our point of view as a customer, as a client, they might be different. So we will still have to adapt to each package at a time. So this creates the problem. And how do we solve it?
Okay, so what are our goals? First, we need to organize package structure and content. So we want to make sure that each package is separated logically correct. So for example, SQL scripts are placed in one directory, binaries in another. We want to make sure that each package works with our deployment process, so the packages should be repeatable. They may have different content, but we have to create a pattern in which they are delivered. So finally, we set rules of version management for each application. in a way that allows us to get information about the package without looking into it. Solution. First, we analyze existing packages. We analyze deployment instructions and documentation if it's available. And then we talk to developers and vendors. And together, we create a standard package proposal. Vendors and developers have to put the most effort on the process of standardization. However, it makes their future work in delivery package much easier. Finally, when the proposal is ready, it's time to show it to administrators. We need both sides, development and operations, to agree in this new way of package delivery. When the package is optimized, it is also easy to create rules of version management, which is the last step of the solution. Okay, and the result. In result of our changes, we decreased the workload of package delivery. We eliminated instructions from the packages, and so developers don't need to create these instructions every time, and administrators don't need to analyze them also before the deployment. Developers in this situation are less engaged in deployment because they don't need to explain what is in the instruction. They don't need to explain it to administrators. We also reduced number of mistakes from wrong interpreted instruction. The rules of version management gives us clarity and proper order that helps in everyday tasks. Finally, we can implement build automation as a first step of deployment process.
Okay, so we are back in the forest, but we conquered our first challenge, and it seems like not a big deal, right? So what's next? The next challenge is about artifacts. Artifact is every element of the package that is involved in deployment process. So why this is a problem? Those artifacts are the most important. The most important from the deployment automatization point of view are the properties and the specific configuration for each environment. So when we do it manually, usually the properties or some values are delivered in the property files or instruction, and administrator manually puts them in to the environment. So this creates a problem because we don't want to do it manually. We want to automate it. And next element is that administrators often use some sensitive data like logins and passwords in order to proceed with the deployment. And we cannot simply store it in our tool because this might violate the security policies of our company. So this might rule out automation completely. So what do we do?
Okay, so we have a goal where we're looking for artifact management simplification. That means that we are looking to separate specific artifacts which can be dynamically parameterized from the package or from the repository to a different location for further processing. So this also is related to separation of some security information, some confidential information, and also very often that kind of information, as Sebastian said, can be part of the static configuration files or deployment files. So we're looking for separation of that to a different location. And the final action and the goal is artifact tokenization, which allows us for dynamic processing of templates. So what is the solution? Basically, we have two approaches for that. The one is that we deliver, actually not we, but the developers deliver templates together with the packages, or simply just leave them in the repository. And then such templates can be processed by the deployment tool. So the second approach is to put that kind of templates into the automation tool. So what are the advantages? Advantages are that we can very easy have access to that kind of templates. Whoever has access to the repository and automation tool can reach the templates and manage them, adjust and change whatever it's needed. Also, that kind of templates are versioned, right? So we can go back to the previous version, compare what's changed, and so on. Additionally, we can parameterize the template. So on the screen, we have the logic how we can achieve that. So we assume that we have entry static artifact body, which contains all information needed for the, for instance, deployment to a specific environment, right? We have deployment strategy. So follow these two information. Automation developer or just developer prepares the template. Also, additional information like environment parameters, deployment parameters, and the tokens, which we're using for the replacement in the template for the parameter values, supposed to be defined in automation tool. So this allows us to create an artifact, the final artifact, which is parameterized to a specific environment, and further that artifact can be processed by any other way as needed and defined. So what is the result? As I mentioned, we have easy access to the templates. They can be very easy managed and accessible to the people who are involved in the deployment. Also, this gives us flexibility in delivery ready-to-use artifacts, which means that not only the target system can process that kind of artifacts, but also if there are some additional tools or software, we can provide that artifacts to that tools and they can process it further.
Okay, so we are still on the environment problem. What happens in the organizations that they have many various environments, many various types of environments. So the differences cause also the deployment process to be different if we do it manually. So for instance, we might have deployment verification that we want to run, but we don't want to run it on development environments. We just want to do it on any other. We might have some test data anonymity tools that we want to use, but we want to use them only on test and development environments as well. So we don't want to do it on pre-prod or production. Then we have environment-specific configuration. Those are just 5 types of environments. There are many instances of them, and every environment has its own configuration that we need to take care of in the process. And finally, there are 2 last elements that are pretty common for production deployment. There is SLA, because we want to make sure that our downtime of production environment is as low as possible. So we want to check how well the deployment process is going. And finally, there are some manual actions or approvals, because we want to know what is going into the production. So we want to approve it manually before the process will start. So those differences cause some ideas that we might create many deployment processes in order to be able to deploy to many different environments. But this is not what we want to do.
So what are our goals here? First, we want to handle multiple environments in one single generic process. In order to do that, we have to control the process with environment parameters. Workflow of this process should be designed in a way that enables its processing on, for example, different types of middlewares. We also want to be able to expand process freely. So if we want to add some new component, new environment, or just make a change in process workflow, we do it in one place, in one process. So it's much easier to change things in one place than in many processes for each environment, for example. The solution for this step, by using effects of previous steps, that is package standard and artifact templates, We have strong foundation to build such generic process. But first, we of course need to collect all the differences between environments. And we can say that there are two main ways of handling differences. We can control, steer the workflow of deployment process by using flags, or we just can use parameters holding specific values for an environment. When we know all these differences and we know all possible values for parameters, we can create a process with workflow control that fits our deployment. The differences cause execution using alternative paths or input of specific values during deployment.
So here we have the example of implementation of one of the deployment processes for an application, and we want to show you how the alternative path looks like. So we are using a flag here. You can see the blocks that represent steps of the process. They contain commands that are executed on the environment or specific actions like restarting an application server. In the marked area, you can see the usage of flag. We created an alternative path to verify deployment only if the deployment isn't done on the development or QA environment. So this is how we do it.
Okay. So result. What are the results? We use our generic process frequently, which allows us to detect bugs and possible improvements. We make all changes in one place, one process, and instead of many. And this allows us to quickly introduce the changes. This makes our process optimal. We also have all environments parameters stored in one place. They are no longer in configuration files, no longer hard-coded or manually inputted by administrator. This process with parameters is also great documentation for future changes. It makes it easy to maintain.
Okay, so we are back in our forest, and we just solved 3 more challenges. We have last one to go, and it's looking better and better. So this is just like the last challenge. We want to have more visibility, right? Currently we see the other side of the forest, so we are really close to our goal. And the last challenge is also about visibility. We want to know what is going on with our deployment, right? We want to see everything that is possible in order to have full control. So currently, if we do it manually, the deployment process usually starts many sub-processes on other environments, other components, and it's pretty hard to follow. It's not easy to link 2 different actions on 2 different machines or components together as a one deployment process. What's even more difficult, the manual tasks that administrator is doing during the deployment process are inconsistent from the deployment process point of view. So it's really hard to link all the manual actions that occur on the environment with something that is correlated with process of deployment. So if anything goes wrong, it's really troublesome to analyze any errors. It's almost guaranteed that it will take loads of time. So there are some organizations for which documentation of the deployment is really important. They need to have this documentation stored, and collecting documentation logs and results from each deployment from various sub-process environments might need really high effort. So what do we do here?
So the main goal is actually to keep all logs from all deployment processes in one single place. So whoever is involved in the deployment process can easily reach them, look, analyze, and take decisions. Also, it has impact on quick error analysis. So this is the goal that if anything happens, this could be very easy found and delegated to the people who can solve the problems. And another goal is to have access to all parameters related to the deployment. It's not limited, but mostly it's environment, middleware, and deployment, strictly the process, different process parameters. So What is the solutions? There is one single and simple solution. Just use the automation tool, because most of the automation tools automatically collect all logs from all sub-processes. Of course, that kind of logs can be customized, which means that the output of the logs could follow the requirements. And finally, we can use some external tools to produce automatically documentation and deliver that documentation to the people involved in the processes. So this is the physical view on the audit process. So admin has access directly to the deployment tool. Deployment tool has an interface, for instance, web UI. So through that, the admin has access to the deployment process in runtime. So any changes, even live changes, are available. So he can even monitor what's going on in a specific situation. So the process is a set of sub-processes, so the tree is visible at the same time. And if automation tool has defined the process, the logs can be used to produce well-designed documentation. And what are the results? So basically, the automation tools, each automation tools provides access to the logs by just simple URL. It could be URL to the request process, where we can see the tree of the sub-processes and all logs. At the same time, because this is the tool, it automatically standardizes the output, right? So we can treat it as a documentation. And at the very end, administrator has access to the environment configuration parameters and deployment parameters. Possibility of analysis of processes and debugging. And debugging is the most crucial point of that, because very often the part of the deployments are just scripts, right? So each sub-process could contain the body of the script, which was already parameterized. So the admin can just copy that script in case of error, go to the destination environment and just paste that script and run it to see and debug the situation, what happened. Accessing through the URL or by documentation also shows the clarity of the deployment logic. And of course, administrator can take an action in case of error to assign the task to developer or somebody else from the team to address the error and request the repair of the error.
Okay, so we addressed all 4 challenges that we promised, and the question is, was it really so difficult and hard, right? Maybe we wasn't even in the forest. And this is something that I would like you to take from this presentation. We have this luxury that when we come to the organization, we are outsiders. We are not in everyday situations that most people are. So it's easier for us to see what needs to be changed and what to improve in order to maximize the efficiency of IT department. It's something that you can also do. If you want to introduce some DevOps solutions in your company, take a step back, look at the bigger picture, because it's really not that scary. You just need to plan it and go step by step. Last thing we want to tell you is slogan of our company, move it forward. This is the thought that is really important for us. We like to increase the efficiency of IT departments. This is what we do, this is what our company does, and this is why we're interested in DevOps, as the culture of constant urge for improvements. So currently we are also looking for new members of our team. So if you're interested, if you liked our presentation, you would like to work with many organizations and many different IT departments and try to maximize their efficiency using DevOps tools, feel free to talk to us. We are outside. We have our station, let's say, where you can talk with us, and maybe we'll be able to work together. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and you learned something from it. If you have any questions, I think we have a little bit more time.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for one question. Do you have anything you'd like to ask? One question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation. Can you maybe mention a few tools we could use to do all that, like specific tools?
Yeah, we are after 2 projects when we introduce the tools for deployment automation, and in both of those we use IBM Urban Code with help of some open source tools like Jenkins or some code repositories. So this is where we have the most experience. But there are also open source tools that you may find, and they're really well documented. There are also Puppet Labs, so it's really easy to get into it.
One more question. Let's do that.
Hello.
Hello.
I got a question. Have you got any experience in massive scale deployments, like software that weighs gigabytes on hundreds of servers?
Currently, we are finishing a project for a bank. So it's a financial institution. They're also always huge. And the level of automation there, we automated like over 30 systems right now. So yeah, we have the experience.
Probably can share some more information about this project
Yeah.
at your stand.
We really encourage you to contact with us. We are a whole day here, so it would be great to talk personally, right?
Okay, so thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Applause, please.